Needless Things Podcast. Welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, and I am doing this with even less preparation than I normally have. Every Sunday, it's so funny, I've mentioned this before, in general, I think last episode I managed to record the intro around like 10 in the morning for some reason. I can't remember if it was raining and I didn't walk or what was going on. I always have a certain number of tasks to complete on a Sunday, like office stuff to do. And when I say office stuff, I'm not talking about my day job. I'm talking about the many different things I do outside of my day job. So I've always got stuff to do on Sunday, whether it's put together reviews for the week or organize for upcoming panels or whatever. There's always stuff to do. And somehow it just happens to always end up being around 4 o'clock when I sit down to record the intro, which means I record this and then I put the episode together, and I'm uploading it very shortly before it goes live at 6 p.m., which it's not always Sunday at 6 p.m. When I relaunched the podcast, I've talked about this before, I decided that I have a regular schedule for the Needless Things YouTube channel. I have a regular schedule for Audible Interlude, and as important as I feel scheduling is, or at least as important as I felt it was when I started this, with this I decided this has to stay fun, and when I do it, I have to feel like there's something worth doing or something to talk about, or I'll have an interview or whatever. So there will be weeks where this just doesn't happen, or it happens on Wednesday or whatever, because this is very much just I need to have stuff to do. And the other crazy thing is, let me pull my calendar up here, obviously for myself. You can't see my calendar. It's funny how the interviews go, because I'll hit a spot where I've got like 4 interviews in a row, 4 weeks in a row, or very close together at least. And then I'll just hit a dry spell where there's nobody that's interesting to me, or I have a week where there's so much other stuff going on. Like, I'll just hit this spot where there's like 4 or 5 weeks of definitely not interviews. And I don't always need interviews, as you've heard. Recently we did the Superman Fantastic Four episode. I did the one episode where it's just me talking about stuff. But I do like to focus it on interviews as much as I can. And sometimes it just dries up, and now all of a sudden I have interviews scheduled. Now, I'm not including Dragon Con week in this because I'm going to do a Dragon Con episode where I talk about the panels, what went into them, and the game show and everything else. And that's going to be that whole episode. I may or may not have somebody on to talk to about it. But now I've got 3, 4, 5. I have potentially 6 interviews in the next 7 weeks that all came together in the last week. So that's what happens sometimes. And actually, what I'm realizing now, the difficult part of this is I'm going to have all the Dragon Con panels as well. Now, I say all the Dragon Con panels, it's really just going to, because Audible Interlude will be the episode of Audible Interlude for that first week of September. So that's not Needless Things. But then there's Batman Forever, Halloween Con, and Panel of Adventure. All 3 I will record and most likely produce as episodes of Needless Things. And so that's 3. Although really, timing-wise, I guess Halloween Con I just save until October anyway. So that'll be maybe that first full week of October. So October 5th, I think. Maybe I'll save Halloween Con for that. But it's just funny, like in the next several weeks, I'm going to have loads and loads of content where the past few weeks haven't necessarily had critical stuff that I needed to get out there. Speaking of critical stuff that I need to get out there, if you haven't seen Weapons yet, go see Weapons in the theater. It's probably past the time where you'll be able to see it with a big crowd of unruly folks, but do try to go see it in the theater. It is absolutely awesome. I can't stop thinking about it. We've really been fortunate with movies this year, I feel like, and really with horror the last few years, there have been at least a couple of really remarkable, thought-provoking horror flicks that won't leave your brain over the last few years. It's really fantastic. The Substance? I had not planned to list them. I'd have to sit down and think back to what in the world. Oh, Nosferatu I really loved, which we talked about here on the show. There've just been. I feel like, and I don't like to say elevated horror. I think that term is really corny. But there's been just some remarkable, thoughtful horror lately, and Weapons is no exception. It is awesome. I can't wait to buy it and have it in the house to watch whenever I want. Good, memorable stuff in there. What else has been going on? So I finished Taskmaster, which I think I might have mentioned a couple weeks ago. But I am now watching Taskmaster New Zealand, which is, I believe, a licensed... So what happens sometimes with shows like this is they become a big hit in their home country, and then maybe a production company... I should look up, but this is just what I suspect. A production company in New Zealand was like, well, that seems like a great idea. We should do that as well. Because a few people from New Zealand have been contestants on Taskmaster, or guests, or whatever you call them. And maybe a New Zealand production company reached out and said, hey, we would be interested in just doing Taskmaster for ourselves. Because it has all the same music, same concept, same set design, same tone. Although the interesting thing about it is, I've spent my whole entire life with English humor. So while it is different from American humor, I generally get it, and the beats and some of the presentation of it, I've just had my whole life. New Zealand humor is apparent. It's something to adjust to, especially after you've just watched 19 seasons of Taskmaster in the past couple of months, few months, whatever. And then to adjust to the New Zealand version, which it's still funny. It's still a great show, and it's the same elements, but it is just New Zealand humor is a little different. I don't know how to describe how it's different, so I'm not going to try. I'll just say it's been interesting to adjust to that. But it's great. It's great, and I'm thrilled it's there, and I wish we had more Taskmasters from other countries, although I don't think I would want an American Taskmaster. I don't think the way that we overly produce and sanitize and that's been the interesting thing about watching so much television that's produced in England alongside Taskmaster, because there's a quiz show that I can't remember the name of right now. I've been picking up little bits and pieces of the people who appeared on Taskmaster. I've been watching other things that they've done, and there is a very refreshing rawness and lack of fear that's there that we don't have in America right now. And it's wild to me to think that we're the repressed, embarrassed to be ourselves. And let me just tell you, if there's anybody that can relate to that, it's me. But we're that. When you compare our entertainment in that style to other countries, there is this sheen of manufactured respectability. Like, even in our fart jokes and stuff, it's still all very curated to be as banal as possible. It doesn't feel raw or real. I don't know that I'm really qualified to be describing these things, but that's just the feeling I get from watching this stuff. not a great time to be American, quite frankly, as I've mentioned many times over the course of this revival. So, in other news, just busy. I'm just busy. Oh, I don't know that I've mentioned the day job thing. So that whole situation. Now it still ends. Oh my gosh, 2 months from today. I didn't even note that because today is a Sunday, which throws everything off always. 2 months from today, the job ends. It is my last day employed with the company I've been employed with for 20 years now. I have not made a decision yet on what I'm doing after, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm fine. I'm not panicked really at all, and perhaps I should be, but I'm not. So anyway, 2 months away from that, and I thought my last couple of months at this job were because my replacements had been hired. I thought it was going to be me looking for another job, like me really investing in that, which I am doing. But now they need me to take an active hand in training a current class. So I am doing that 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, which I know sounds like 4 days a week. That's great. But it is draining work. It is exhausting work that takes up a lot of my bandwidth. And especially when you consider I thought that I wasn't going to have anything to be doing and that I was going to be focusing on resumes and figuring out where I actually would be okay. Like there's a spectrum there. Where would I find it acceptable to work versus what job would I actually like to have? That's a big range. And look, quite frankly, after the last 20 years, I'd be thrilled to find just somewhere I'd find it acceptable to work. I'd be really happy to land just in that situation. Because I've not been there. So it'd be great to find something like that. But I thought that was going to be my focus, is narrowing that, or really broadening, narrowing down the jobs that were available to me, but broadening my search for jobs. And it's just not the case. So, yeah, busy, busy, busy. And I will not allow myself to fall behind in any of the things that I have, whether it's Needless Things or the game show or the job search or the day job or the family or whatever. I will not slouch in any of those departments. And I suppose, I don't feel like, I said this is not going to happen every week, this podcast, but I don't feel like that's slouching because that was my intent from the beginning, is it's going to happen when it's time for it to happen. And I'm not going to make myself do it every week because I have plenty of other things that I have that sort of schedule for. So with that intro out of the way, I am finally releasing the last panel from Stellarfest 2025. Yes, I know it was months ago, but it's time for the Star Trek toy panel to make its way into the world. I sat down with my pals Gary Mitchell and award-winning Bobby Nash, and we had a great conversation in front of a great audience. I could not be more excited for next year's Stellarfest, even though it's months away at this point. It's at the end of April, I believe. We've already, me and my crew, who call ourselves the Con Buddies, that we work on pretty much everything together. We have submitted the panels that we would like to do for Stellarfest. I am very hopeful we get to do everything, but at the very least, we want to be able to do something because that it was just such a well-run, pleasant, fun convention that we had, that we wished we had planned to spend more time at. So more on that in the future. So anyway, we didn't even get halfway through the notes. As a matter of fact, I submitted, I need to submit for part 2 of the Star Trek toy panel. That's in my to-do list, and I haven't made it down there yet. Because when I go into a panel, I make more notes than I need because I want to be prepared. And despite the fact that I know every single panel I've ever done, we don't get nearly through all of the subject matter that's available, and that's just the fun of it. It's the fun of how I like to do panels. I want the conversation to happen. I want it to be engaging and fun. I don't want to sit up there just listing bullet points. I want to get the audience involved. Whoever my co-panelists are, I want their engagement. That to me is more important than listing information. And that's where we get sidetracked and we have fun and we give, that's to me what makes good live entertainment. So we really only got maybe a third of the way into what I had prepared for Star Trek toys, but it's a great conversation. I think you'll have fun listening to it next time. And I cannot believe we're already here, but next time will be my Dragon Con rundown. Like I said, lots of exciting interviews. I'm not going to talk about what any of them are because you don't do that until it's already happened. But now, let's talk about Star Trek toys. Enjoy. Well, it's time. So we're going to start without Bobby, and if Bobby shows up, cool. If Bobby doesn't show up, too bad for him.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's missing.
That's right. So welcome to Needless Things presents the entire complete history of Star Trek toys. I'm Dave West. I operate the Needless Things YouTube channel, Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast, and also am the subject of Troublemaker, a documentary that followed me for 2 years of my desperate attempts to get behind microphones because it's what I love more than anything. So check out Troublemaker movie online. And I've got business cards to pick up after the panel here. So it's funny because I knew I was going to be here this weekend because it's very exciting. First of all, let's give it up. What a first year for Stellarfest. We came down here yesterday. We knew I had a Doctor Who panel at noon, and I kind of thought, we'll go down there, we'll do the panel, and hang out for a couple hours and then probably head home. And we ended up staying for 12 hours. We were here from just before 11 till 11 o'clock at night. And the only reason that I left is because I had to get stuff together for the game show that we did this morning. Otherwise, I'm really impressed. This has been a great time so far at Stellarfest, and I hope we're back next year for this. But knowing that I was going to be doing a couple of panels, I hit Charles up. Let's give it up, first of all, for the proprietors of the Star Trek track here at Stellarfest. I hit him up and I was like, man, I should have just thought about doing a Star Trek toy panel. And he's like, well, do you want to? And I was like, yes, I do. So I'm here doing a Star Trek toy panel with...
My name is Gary Mitchell. I am the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics Track at Dragon Con. I am the head of Good to Be a Geek Media. Our main podcast right now is a podcast of Amontillado, a horror podcast. And I can be found at any convention that will let me get behind a microphone as well.
Right? That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Gary Mitchell on Star Trek. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do the thing.
Morals are for men. And yes, it's my real name. I'll show you my ID to prove it.
So as... we are both, as most of you I'm sure are lifelong Star Trek fans because it's a thing that has just been around our whole lives. To us, there was never a world before Star Trek. So as a kid, they were my heroes, and playing with toys and stuff, they were just as much a part of my pop culture toy collecting as Batman, Spider-Man, anything else. And over the years, though, Star Trek has had a very different journey from a lot of other franchises in the toy department, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into it, I do want to go ahead and tell everybody, obviously, if you have not watched it, The Toys That Made Us on Netflix has a Star Trek episode that is fantastic. It misses a lot of things because they only have 52 minutes or whatever it is to cover this massive world. But it's absolutely worth watching that episode because they talk to the creators. They talk to the people who were dealing with the license over the years. It's a fantastic watch. And I also want to recommend as a reference, there's a website called figurerealm.com. It's not the most complete website in the world, but my gosh, it's an incredible resource. If you're looking at any franchise or any toy line and you want to get the best overview of everything that came out, it's fantastic because you go,
You go to Figure Realm, you pull up Star Trek, and it has every licensor that has handled Star Trek over the years, from Ertl to Mego to all of them, and you can go category by category, line by line, everything that's been released. And there are a couple of misses here and there, but I'll tell you what, as I'm sure you all know, when you're talking about the Playmates Star Trek line, such an expansive line with so many releases, and they hit almost everything. And we're talking hundreds of different releases. So check out, after you've listened to this panel, check out figurerealm.com if you want to go and get pictures, more information, more detail about what we're going to be talking about today. How I like
that deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is always the thing is what I enjoy is we're going to sit here, we're going to talk about kind of our personal reminiscences, about what we remember, the things over the years of Star Trek that have pulled us in or maybe haven't been the most successful executions. So we're here to talk about what, Dave and Gary, and we're going to hit up you guys about what you remember about Star Trek. But after the fact, go do the deep dive. Go look at the whole Mego line, the Ertl stuff, like the motion picture toys that Mego put out before they lost the license. Like, all of that stuff is worth taking a look at, because Star Trek has a very special place in pop culture licensing, because it has run the gamut for, my personal toy life is basically Mego, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, on and on. And Star Trek runs the gamut. You've got the Mego style figures, you've got 3 3/4 inch, very basic style figures, and you've got everything up to like 1/6 scale, incredibly sculpted, detailed soft goods, 12-inch figures. It's had everything. And not every franchise that we're fans of gets quite the same variety of licensing that Star Trek has had over the years. It's really interesting as it's representative of the evolution of toys all the way from the 60s to now.
Yeah, there's no Blake 7 Hot Toys.
Yeah, right. Which is a crime, by the way.
Yes.
But there are not. So, again, we're going to keep it on a very personal note with us and with all of you. But, Gary, what, if you dig back into your memory banks, what do you remember first from the Star Trek toys?
One of my first toys, I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old, I fell into Star Trek like a lot of people our age with the animated series first, watching that on Saturday mornings. And one of my favorite toys that I played with was Color Forms.
Oh, that's great.
Anybody remember Color Forms?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I had the Star Trek Color Forms. It was the bridge, you had the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, award-winning Bobby Nash!
I was in the next room over going, am I early?
Well, Bobby, that's Star Wars. This is Star Trek. Please welcome
There's
Bobby
a
Nash.
difference, don't you?
That's a whole other panel, my friend. All right.
That's still the best after dark.
So, back
Yes. Back
to Gary reminiscing
Yes.
about Color Forms.
Yeah. And there were Color Forms for like a lot of properties.
Everything.
And-
70s and 80s, everything got Color Forms.
Yeah.
Love
and there was just something about it. I had my red Uhura, I had my gold Captain Kirk. You got the weird alien from the end credits from Corbinite maneuver staring at you. You could throw them up on the screen. And it was fun just moving around, stick them on there. Oh, this is happening. And then just moving around again. After a while, I was like, I'd like another setting. And so you start sticking them on the wall.
Or you buy multiple color form sets, and then suddenly they're on a planet that looks like Manhattan because you had the Spider-Man set.
Right.
Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't know, Color Forms were the most basic of toys. It would come in this oblong box, and it was a sheet of cardboard with a finish on it that was representative of the background, an environment from whatever the franchise was. For G.I. Joe, it would be like a jungle with a fort on the side. For Star Trek, it might be an alien planet, I think.
There was an alien planet, and the one I had was the bridge.
Okay, so and by the way...
Because you could turn the cardboard over. There was an image on both sides a lot of times.
And most likely an alien planet that an artist, which I want to give it up for the people who created these things that we grew up with, because they go so unrecognized, whether it's an artist who was creating backgrounds for color forms or somebody who was sculpting the action figures that we were playing with. Like back then, these artists didn't get the recognition that creators do now. So you had somebody who, just doing their job, created this phenomenal background alien landscape that's not based on anything from the show. They were just told, hey, we're making a toy for kids based on Star Trek. And they're like, oh, I know what that is. Let me put a bunch of crazy colors in here. So it's
and the crazy colors is important because all the different figures were like I said, one solid color with the drawing of the character on it. So it was like I said, I had my gold Kirk, I had my blue Spock, my blue Bones, red or whatever their shirt color was.
And the background would have this gloss on it, and the part that you played with were these little vinyl cutouts that cling basically to that background. So while they're not necessarily toys or action figures as we tend to think of them, you are still doing storytelling and play with these very simple, easily portable, like you had this whole world in this box.
You were almost making your own comic book.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because especially if you had some, there would be, like if you got the Spider-Man one, there would be 3 or 4 different Spider-Mans in different poses. So whatever he's doing, you could have him do different things. And the sound effects would be some of them.
Yeah, I had a Batman 66 one.
Yeah, and then there would be like damage, like broken rocks, or so you could put all that in there. That like Dr. Octopus is hitting Spider-Man, and there was a phaser. You could either have the phaser or have the phaser with the beam. Yeah.
So we've already spent 10 minutes talking about color forms that aren't even on the list that I made. So here's the decision we have to make now. Are we doing this panel for 1 hour, the standard time, or are we just going to sit here for the next week talking about Star Trek toys?
I know which one we could do.
So color forms, great start. The first thing I remember having, this was one of the Rimco releases. This was actually an Ertl toy. Hang on, sorry, it's lost in my notes. No, this was Rimco. I was right, and Shannon, you probably know a little something about this. The Controlled Spaceflight Enterprise. So,
oh God, yes.
What this was it's remote control in the loosest sense of the term.
This was the 70s.
Right, exactly. There's a pedestal and there's a wire arm. One end of the wire arm, there's a Enterprise with a little fan blade in the saucer section of the Enterprise. And the other side is a weight. And you have a little remote control box. And all you can do is make this Enterprise go in a circle around that pedestal, and it can dip and raise back up. That's it. But the gimmick was there are little items. The Enterprise has a hook on the bottom of it, just like in the show. And they're items that you're trying to dip down and pick up. So you're remote controlling this in this big circular pattern, and there's cargo or whatever that you're trying to pick up. And I probably got this in, 79, 80, somewhere around there. I was 3 or 4 years old. I don't know that I ever picked up anything with this Enterprise, but I loved the device of it, the fun of it, just making this thing go up and down like
I'm flying the Enterprise.
Right.
And it was the height of technology at the
time.
At
the time, forget your drones or your remote control helicopters or whatever that we have available now. Yeah. Back then,
that was the coolest thing.
This was high technology.
Yeah. I mean, this is from the same era where we had those toys that you bought that come in packs. And it was just a round ball with like octopus legs that we threw against the wall and
wacky wall walkers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were easily amused.
Why is there not a wacky Spock walker? Like, how did that technology and Star Trek never blend? Or maybe they did. I don't know. So
I just remember getting yelled at for the stains it left on the wall.
Right, exactly.
This is where I remind everybody that I'm older than they are. For about 2 weeks, I did own the old play set that had the transporter, you put them in, and
Yes, the Mego.
it lasted about 2 weeks before it broke. Yes, they were not well put together. And, as a kid, but yes, that was my first Star Trek toy because it was a little pack and you opened it up. It was a carry case. You opened it up and it was cardboard under like a plastic sheet.
Like a laminate, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of keep it from us destroying it even faster. But we were fascinated by being able to transport the character because you could stick them in there and you just turn the thing, and then when you turn it, the faster you turned it, the more it looked like the effect.
Oh, it looks nothing like the effect.
But I mean,
but you
what
did
they
get
were
this
saying,
wacky swirly.
You were getting this swirly thing, and you could turn it and try to make them disappear. And
Big Bang Theory, wasn't it?
Yep, that's the one.
But it is such a flimsy toy that it did not survive me very long.
Now, having said that, this is another example of the artistry of toys in that these companies would get the license and then just because if you look at this Mego, and again, I encourage you to do a little bit of research later today when you get back home or whatever, check some of this stuff out if you haven't seen this Mego Bridge playset. As Bobby was saying, it's essentially a carrying case that opens up
about like this
and has artwork that, while beautiful, essentially looks nothing like the Star Trek bridge.
Right.
But it's a great toy. It's an immersive environment for your Mego figures to sit down and have adventures in. And that was, back then it was all about your imagination and what you were doing with these figures.
And a lot of those play sets, especially in the early days, were just cardboard. I mean, so we broke them. I mean, even Star Wars.
they weren't
Like I remember
designed
having the Dagobah set, and it's cardboard.
Well, the Mego stuff, because there were literally, if you look at Palatoy, and I don't want to get too off track with other toy lines, but there were a lot of literal just cardboard sets. Mego at least did seal their cardboard pieces in that
nice,
clear vinyl to keep it a little resilient to our grubby little hands.
And what I loved about that is they were so, because I know this is one of your bugaboos, is that same scale. So you could have...
Yeah, they were made for the Mego figure.
Right. So I had Kirk, I had the Gorn, I had that weird bird alien that kind of had like a pterodactyl head, and he had wings. I mean, the fabric body to be feathered or whatever.
The Neptunian.
Yeah, the Neptunian. And I had Paunch from Chips. And they were on adventures together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that was some of the magic of Mego was Marty Abrams, the guy that ran it, just wanted all the licenses.
Yes.
So he had DC, he had Marvel, he had Chips, they had everything. So you had all of these characters, all of these worlds where you could have Paunch on the bridge of the Enterprise flying through space or whatever the case may be.
They also like to save money, so a lot of them were the same figure with just slight differences.
Well, and
But
that's you mentioned the Gorn, which is the lizard from Marvel.
Right.
That's the head, and the body is what, the Klingon uniform? Yeah. So again, it was really more about just having that license and having something representative
But also,
of it.
as kids, we didn't care.
Right.
We didn't care that it was. I mean, we recognized it, but it's like, so cool. I got a figure.
Well, I wish I could bring kid me's sensibilities forward into current me, where I'm so picky about that's not the color that was. I can't even imagine. I wish I could drop that.
Kid me was just happy to have a Kirk figure.
Right.
You know?
Whatever it looked like. Which, granted, the Mego Kirk was pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
So speaking of repurposing, one of the first licensors to get Star Trek, or licensees, I suppose, was Remco, and they repurposed a lot of their existing stuff. They had a line called Hamilton Invaders, and one of the most infamous pieces of Star Trek merchandise is the Star Trek Astro helmet.
Yes.
Who has seen the Astro helmet? So if you don't know, the Astro helmet, again, as seen in Star Trek, the original series, is a space helmet with eye goggles, a big lit siren on top, and there were two varieties. One that said Spock across the forehead, just like Spock's helmet from the show, if you remember, and another one that said Kirk across the forehead, just like Kirk's helmet from the show.
Yes.
The point wasn't making show accurate stuff back then. It was, let's slap this name on something and get it out to the world.
Yeah.
And at the time, now granted, this stuff all predates my existence, but Star Trek became, when it got into syndication and reruns years after it originally aired, there was this thirst for Star Trek merchandise. So anything with that brand on it, once it was in syndication, was going to sell.
My grandmother bought me, because she knew I liked Star Trek, she bought me this thing. It was one of those balsa wood planes with the Enterprise information on the wings.
It was still a plane.
NCC 1701 on the wings of the balsa plane. And that was the,
That's like the kind of toy you would get at the Stone Mountain souvenir store back in like 1984.
Yes.
But because it said Star Trek on it, they, people, like, especially like my grandparents had no clue. Or my parents had no clue what any of that stuff was.
Yeah, and it's like, you remember the disc guns that were big in the 70s?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had one that said phaser on it.
Right.
And it was like, I'm shooting my phaser.
Just anything that they could slap the name on.
They would, that back before we were putting people's eyes out with that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I would love to have
One kid chokes to death.
I know, right? One.
I would love to have a set of the Star Trek lawn darts.
Oh.
I don't think that was a thing, but I'd buy them if it was.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if somewhere somebody slapped Spock on a lawn dart.
So from the start, one of the most reasonable licensed products were from AMT models. They were making models of the Enterprise from the beginning. And back in the day, you had, not only kids who were putting models together, but you had, professional craftspeople, fans of the show, who were buying these and really trying to make them look screen accurate. And these were fantastic model kits. And to this day, some of the best product you can get are the continuing line of various model kits of the starships from Star Trek. Like, that's one of the most faithful things that have gone on, because of course models have a completely different lineage from licensed toys, where screen accuracy is kind of the selling point of that hobby.
How many do we know how many of the ships they did? I know they did the Enterprise. I believe they did.
There was
a
the
Klingon and
Romulan
a shuttle.
I know there was the Romulan because I mangled that model.
Yeah.
I have no ability putting model kits together. My hand-eye coordination due to my ADHD is just like terrible, and it was even worse then because I was younger then.
Yeah. Well,
it had been through a fight.
Yeah. And if I remember, there were the ones that you glued together, which tended to be more for the adults.
Right.
But they had snapped together.
I was strictly a snap type kid.
Because those were more for the kids. They didn't want you playing with the glue and getting high and all that kind of stuff. So we had to snap together.
We would never.
See, my aunt didn't know. Here, it's a Star Trek thing. Like, okay, oh man, this is...
Yeah, I had no skill for models whatsoever. I wanted to, so I had I think I gave up probably by the time I was 12. I just gave up on models. I understood it was not my thing. But up to that point, I probably had dozens of the box with half assembled, glued together, give up models. I think it got to the point where my dad was like, look, you are not good at this. I'm not spending any more money on this hobby.
But I do remember, I think it was right around when the movie came out, there were some die-cast models, Enterprises. There was one I coveted at a Rose's for 4 months. But my mom...
Roses. Who's familiar with Roses retail? Yes.
I'll give you one better. My stuff as a kid came from Zayre's.
Zayre's, yes.
Where I bought my first comic books.
Nice.
Yes.
But I just kept lusting after that Enterprise, and Mom was like, "That's $8." No.
Yes.
Right. It was.
But I will tell you, the movie. If we're jumping into the movie, around the era of the motion picture was kind of a big boost because that's when they started doing the 3 and 3/4 inch.
Right. Mego went because Mego still had the license at that point. And they decided, we're going to ape the success of some other franchise, the name of which I can't remember, and do these 3 and 3/4 inch
because we got new figures, we got new play sets, but Star Trek was, McDonald's meals was the Happy Meal.
It's
I love
all
that Happy Meal.
and it's all gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, all
Yep.
gray.
Very exciting for
Except
an
for
10-year-old.
except for the playset, which was stark white.
Yes.
The Enterprise, because I remember I did, and it's weird. It always surprised me I got that because we hadn't seen the movie because my parents didn't go to movies and they especially didn't go to sci-fi movies. And my mother had a hatred for William Shatner that I've never understood.
Oh no!
I never understood. Like, I remember going to visit my mother. This is a short one. That she loved the Hallmark things, and she was watching a Hallmark movie, and it's coming on. And as the credits were rolling, the last one said, "And William Shatner." And she changed the channel.
Oh, wow.
She never explained why.
Well,
She's never met it.
You know what? I bet she hates Esperanto.
It could be. It could
That's
very well.
the joke I was about to make.
So I was amazed that one year, like the whatever year it was, either 79 or 80, whatever year that Christmas they had the toy. Santa brought me the Enterprise bridge, and there was a Kirk, Spock, and McCoy sitting in it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And my parents, it was dumb luck because my parents had no idea who Kirk, Spock, and McCoy were. So how I got those three. But those were the only three I had. So all the other bridge positions were handled by a stormtrooper and at one point like G.I. Joe guys are like manning communications and But yeah, that was for me. Those were the first big like play sets I got. And.
And it's a fantastic place.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just
if you
one-
haven't seen it, it's
one big piece of plastic.
large, but
It's like I remember it
But
being
that's
like
stark
this.
white. Yeah.
And but it came with stickers.
Yeah.
You put the stickers for the control consoles
and they're all crooked.
they're all crooked.
Because
They
we're
didn't-
children and we don't know what we're
They
doing.
don't fit well, or they didn't go, and you just finally went.
And they're
"Oh,
paper.
Yeah, and so, but it was kind of flimsy. I mean,
It was vacuum formed.
it was vacuum
Yeah.
formed. It was kind of flimsy
Yeah,
in
it was.
places.
Well, that's the main thing I remember about all those Migos figures is they were fragile as hell. I went
Yeah.
through like 4 Spocks.
Yeah, but the beauty
Legs
of it
just
was,
breaking off.
but that bridge set looked like Star Trek, as opposed to the Mego, which
Right.
that looked like Kirk Spock. Because I hadn't seen the movie, but I'd seen commercials.
Yeah.
I knew what they looked like. I knew in the new costumes, and I was like, "That's them." So this looked like what I wanted to play with, as opposed to the other things which didn't.
So, speaking of Mego, we've talked about the 8-inch Mego figures with the soft goods that everybody's familiar with at this point, and that have been reissued by many different companies. Diamond Select did a run of reissues of the Mego figures. Mego themselves are now making Mego figures
That
again.
new corn is nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a legendary line within the Star Trek universe. But the interesting thing about it is Marty Abrams bought the contract to Star Trek in 1974 for $5,000.
Damn.
Went on to make over $5 million with that license. I mean, it essentially
what year-
made
what year was
Mego.
it?
1974.
Because you have to think about it, too. In 1974, Star Trek was a pretty dead property.
Yeah.
Well, 74 was around the time when it was in syndication,
Yeah.
and that was when it was starting to ramp up again. So over the next 3 years, that's when all of this licensing happened. People were watching it on television
After
in the
school.
afternoons
After
or
school, I
whatever,
came
right?
home, yeah.
And that's when, because the first time around, Star Trek was not successful.
Right.
Yeah.
It was in syndication where people found it, and this licensing blitz happened in the mid to late 70s,
Yeah.
which led to the motion picture.
Well, and I think we got the cartoon right around that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cartoon was
After that.
also a huge part of the revival.
Yeah, and that was
And-
that was a big deal for us as kids.
Yeah,
the cartoon.
but something that kind of is interesting about toy lines at that time, we talked about how they didn't really look like stuff in the show.
Sure.
Accuracy really didn't matter.
True.
I
True,
mean,
but
there
when
was a
I'm-
lot of it's a toy for a kid. Who
True,
cares?
but when I got my Enterprise bridge playset, and it looked like the Enterprise.
That's why
bridge,
that's a surprise.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Well, and that was the thing, is that one, if you had the older Mego, the 8-inch playset that looked kind of just like Star Trek but an acid trip, and then this one that looked more realistic, you've got to wonder what the licensing involvement was like, because at that point it was still very much Roddenberry was still in control.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder with the motion picture if maybe he took a little more of a hand.
That was kind of when they started
things.
pushing him out.
Well, and it was after the motion picture's failure that he had essentially nothing to do with Wrath of Khan, which we'll get to that. Real quick, I want to mention, did either of you gentlemen have the Mission to Gamma 6 playset?
I
did not.
Based on the Apple, loosely based on an episode called The Apple. So we're not going to get deep into it here because I didn't have it either. I only know of it from looking at things online. But I strongly encourage everybody, again, in your research, after you go home today, look up Mission to Gamma 6 Star Trek playset. It is wild. But the important thing about it is when you look at it, you can see how it inspired playsets from lines later on. It looks a little bit like Cat Slayer. It looks a little bit like the Fright Zone. There's a glove puppet that's part of the play pattern of Gamma 6. And you go forward a few years to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and you have that same glove puppet thing going on, which would be carried over in other playsets. But it's just interesting to me because when I saw this, all I thought about is, my gosh, this thing is insane. However, it appears to have influenced things that I grew up with later on, like they took the play patterns and used them further down the line.
I love a glove puppet. That's what I loved about the Sectar one with the giant spider thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, a lot of toy lines do that. Like, when G.I. Joe did Kung Fu Grip, then suddenly others are doing remember we had you squeeze their legs and their arms, So there's a lot of that they play on each other. And
so we're going to move on. This is very interesting. The next thing that comes up, we talked a little bit about Wrath of Khan and how the lack of success, we'll say, of the motion picture led to Roddenberry kind of being squeezed out of decision-making for Star Trek. They come back strong with Wrath of Khan. But because at this point sales had dried up for Star Trek toys, there are no toys for Wrath of Khan. It's this huge blockbuster phenomenon, the grand return of Star Trek to the public interest and to wallets, but nothing is planned toy or licensing wise because people were ready to give up on it.
Yeah, there was no comic book adaptation. I think there was a novelization, but I think that was
it. It was really good, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, it expands a lot on what you see in the movie.
Are really good.
Yes.
There were no trading cards, but there were playing cards.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was almost like this echelon of like, well, if we don't have quite enough faith for trading cards, we will still do playing cards for your thing.
Yeah.
So Wrath of Khan, at the time it comes out, gets no toys. But then we get Star Trek 3, which follows Wrath of Khan, and at this point people are interested in licensing again. They want to cash in on, man, people are back into Star Trek. Wrath of Khan, big time, let's go. So Ertl gets the license from 1984 to 1989, and we do get toys from Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. We go back to a different scale, and the movie does okay, but not great, because everybody in this room, I'm sure, knows that Star Trek movies are, for a long time, diminishing returns. And, of course, the classic, the even-numbered ones are great, the odd-number ones, not so much. So Star Trek 3, while it did okay at the box office as far as the licensed tie-in stuff, not so much. So Ertl just skips Star Trek 4, which is great. Why don't we have figures of George and Gracie? I want big, giant whale action figures.
I want a whale figure you can put in your aquarium that comes with a little Spock attached to the wire.
Yes. Why is there not at least, and look, I sometimes we have to acknowledge the way that the market is, and I will say that Funko Pops are loosely sort of toys. Why do we not at least have a Funko Pop of one of the whales with Spock?
Because I've got like
Although I
three
did
versions
still,
of
I did
Shark
bring
from
everybody
Jaws.
here.
Right.
Yeah, I do have my vintage Klingon warbird right here. that I've parked.
Yeah, right, yes, exactly.
It's right next to my Defiant tattoo.
Well, that's another. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. So Ertl in 1989, after seeing, well, people seem to really like Star Trek 4, and we didn't make anything, so Star Trek 5. Star Trek 5
That's
has
gotta
got a
be
big
good.
one.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's gonna love Star Trek 5. It's called The Final Frontier. That's the whole thing of the franchise. Let's get in on this one. They make Final Frontier vehicles, just vehicles on this one. They're like, okay, we didn't do so well with the human characters. Let's just do the vehicles for this one. And then Star Trek 5, not so much.
It's Star Trek 5.
Not so much. You're right. Which, by the way, I love each of the Star Trek movies. I can find redeeming qualities about every one of them. If I watch the motion picture over the course of the next weekish, I'm gonna watch all of them. All of those original cast movies, I just love them.
Yeah, it's a
great
I
era.
grew up with them.
Yeah.
You know, they're
It's
kinda,
like revisiting old friends. You know,
It is. It really
Yeah,
is.
So yeah, even when they're having a bad day, you still love seeing them.
even if they're having a bad day and they're aging maybe not so great sometimes,
The
it's still
road scene
entertaining.
is good.
Well, look, I like Star Trek 5.
Why is Captain Kirk climbing the mountain?
If you have not seen the Captain Kirk climbing the mountain video on YouTube, please do check it out.
Yes.
We've given you so much homework here. We will be back next year at Stellarfest 2026,
Check your work.
and we will make sure you followed up on all of this. You will get a report card.
Yes.
So we're going to jump ahead because we are actually running out of time a little bit here. Obviously, we have to talk about Playmates.
Yes.
The greatest and most expansive line of Star Trek toys that has existed. Encompassed everything from the vehicles to playsets to figures. It was literally anything that you might want from Star Trek at that point they made, except, and this goes back to the lack of Wrath of Khan toys, the entire cast of Wrath of Khan, which to this day we still do not have one line.
They teased us recently.
I know when they gave up, and we'll talk about that if we have time.
That was also at a point in my life where I was buying. I had a job. I could afford to buy my own stuff.
Well, and that was it.
Those Playmates figures were affordable.
The '90s. Well, that was a huge thing. Is they were very affordable. They were everywhere, and to a point, they were easy to find. You could get every character that you wanted. It was very accessible, and it was brilliant because Varner Studios, who had designed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toys, that I don't know if you guys have heard of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but in the
very underground.
in the late 80s, there was this franchise, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They had a cartoon, they had a toy line, and it literally ruled the world. So Varner Studios, another Google assignment for you, designed all of those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toys and worked very closely with Playmates toys, and also designed the incredibly successful Playmates Star Trek figures. So scale-wise, they were about the same size as Ninja Turtles. They had a little more articulation, and it turned out to be a magic formula because while Star Trek The Next Generation was certainly a pop culture phenomenon, it's not necessarily something that kids were getting really heavy into, but these toys on the shelf next to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, very clearly sharing some aesthetics,
Similar body types, especially.
Right.
The way they stood.
And
they were almost
scale-wise,
stopped.
they were that 5.5 inches scale, whatever that is. 1/15th scale, I don't know. But it was something that kids could connect. And like you were saying, having Punch on the bridge of the Enterprise with your Mego figures, this was a situation where kids would go into Walmart, Target, Toys R Us, rest in peace, and see these similar figures and maybe don't even know anything about Star Trek, but they're seeing these cool aliens and these humans that could interact with their Ninja Turtles, and that Playmate Star Trek line blew up. It was eminently collectible for kids and for adults.
Yeah, well, especially as the adults, because like I want a little Captain Kirk for my desk at work. It's perfect.
And they came with stands.
They're palm-sized. They've got accessories that you can either put on them or throw in a drawer, whatever. And that was the other thing is, as far as the collectability of the line, you could just get what you wanted. It didn't feel, there wasn't this compulsion for the average person. I've got to get every single bit of it. I've got to use all that kind of...
Not lunatics like us.
Right, yeah, right. That's a whole other thing. So, huge. Playmates really managed to cash in a smart way that roped in not just the old school Star Trek fans, but a whole next generation of consumers.
And it's still surprisingly affordable. You can go...
Oh yeah, to this day, you can get a mint on card for like $8.
Yeah, there's a wonderful original series set with all the main cast, and you can get it for like $20.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. You can. So this is interesting. Because I wasn't on board from the start with the Star Trek The Next Generation stuff from Playmates, because while I was watching the show, my heart was still original series, and they weren't doing that at first. But they launched their Star Trek Classic Collection with a bridge. It's this beautiful box set of the bridge. They've turned it into 2 levels, but it's that toy design thing where you're like, man, somebody sat down and was like, all right, let me figure out how to make this look really cool and irresistible to people. It's this beautiful box, 2-level bridge, and it comes with the original crew, and they're positioned in it so you can leave it in the box, and you have this really great display piece, or open it up and have the crew. But I asked my mom for that, because there was like a year of my life where I wasn't actively collecting toys. Sometime when I was in high school, but that Christmas I told my mom, I was like, I want that for Christmas. If you can get me that set. She's like, David, that's a toy. You're 16. Is that really? I was like, just come on, you know how I am. So I got that set, and that was my entry point into the Playmates toy collection, and it's starting to go up now.
Oh, it is?
And I found it at a vintage toy shop in Wilmington, North Carolina last year. They had it for like $40, and I was like, because I've still got my original, but it's open.
Right.
I have the bridge out with the figures on it, but it's not still in the box. I was like, I'd really like to have one mint in the box. And I should have bought it, because now it is selling for about twice that. Oof. Which is still, though,
which
a
is
bargain.
still fair, because we're talking $10 a figure at that point.
Yeah, it's a great set.
What Playmates really did that more interested me than the figures was the ships.
Yes.
The ships
the
are
phasers,
amazing.
Or the tricorder.
Oh, the role play items.
Yeah.
Well, the ships and the role play.
Yeah. And they made noise. You could hear the sound effects, and it was the sound effects from the show. Mm-hmm. And I loved those. Those were the things that really got me.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't one of the movies, didn't they have to go back and record the sound effect from the toy to get the accurate...
The toy ended up being screen used because they were more durable than the props. When they came back for a season of the show, the toys that Playmates were making were more durable than the screen props. So they ended up using those in the show.
Yeah. And in First Contact, when the gold ones that in the case he breaks, those were painted toys.
And that was very different at the time, because we've talked about some of the license that toy creators use in putting these products out, where maybe it's not necessarily the acid trip Enterprise bridge that Mego made, but they still aren't like replica level. But Playmates was producing these role play items and these starships that were as close to screen accurate as we'd ever seen from a toy for a retail price. So you were able to get, again, this is the genius of Playmates, is they were going after collectors and after kids buying toys, because a collector could buy Playmates Next Generation Enterprise and put it on their desk at work or in a bookcase behind them or whatever. They could buy a phaser and, put it in a little case or whatever and have this, it didn't seem like a toy. It seemed like a collectible item.
And you could have those little moments where you just reach over and push the button and you hear the tricorder make noise and it just made you feel good and you get to work.
And it's sampled directly from the show's resources.
Yeah, there's just something about that they hit that sweet spot between the kid and the collector.
Yeah, and because if memory serves, they numbered them.
Well,
and that's where the collector.
That's where they ran into problems.
Yeah.
So towards the end of Playmate's dominance, they decided that because they were aware of everybody's buying this stuff, but we do have a core market of collectors that we need to keep interested in what we're doing. We've already released 37 different Picards in every costume he ever wore over the history of the show, which was another thing Playmates got right. They went the Kenner Star Wars tactic of we're going to make even the most minor characters. We're going to make even the most minor costume change. We're producing it all. So you get to the point of...
Here's your Captain Picard on Risa.
Yes.
Yeah.
What more can we do for collectors? And if you know your mid-90s, you know that the comic industry was almost ruined by limited editions and variants and covers and whatever else, and the toy industry went through a similar issue. Playmates made the decision that they were going to launch the 1701 collection, that they were going to produce 1,701 pieces of certain items, and that it would be limited in numbers, and that would compel the collector's market to keep investing in this Playmates line. The problem with that was, due to the success of Playmates line, there were way more than 1,701 Star Trek collectors out there, and you had completists who couldn't get their hands on these 1701 editions, and it ended up backfiring, turning the collectors on the line, and it really hurt them in the market. And what's funny is one of the 1701 releases was a set of 3 figures. It was, and you got to remember, so Topps at the time, this is back in the 90s, this is back when honestly, modern toy collecting really probably started in the 90s. They were selling 100,000 pieces of their top-selling figure. A Picard figure would sell around 100,000 pieces. So they just told, and that's 100,000 people bought a Picard. They just told that 100,000 people, well, only 1,701 of you can be completists. And that does not sit well with collectors.
Nope.
So one of the sets that they offered, it was an exclusive set that had Picard, Yar, and Barclay in very specific looks. And at the time, it was selling for massive figures because, again, they're way more than 1,701 collectors. Now, the funny part is, you can go on eBay and buy that for about $20.
Yep.
So the moral of that story is, toy speculating is a fool's game.
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Isn't that the reprint set? Because they shot themselves in the head from both sides.
Oh, okay, well, expand on that, because I have not heard this.
Here's 3 characters, 17,001
Right.
each, on cards. And when people freaked out and got upset and wrote angry letters, they did a box set of reprinting more.
Oh, do I have that back? Because the box set still says 1701 and it's numbered.
The 1701 series, yeah. But so they, again, that pissed off collectors. And
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, if you
selling the figures for $300.
there's only these many of these, except for these reproductions.
Except for the ones we're remaking. Yeah.
Wow, add that to your research notes. Look into this 1701. And with that, we barely scratched the surface of Star Trek toys
So
today.
come back next year, we'll do part 2.
Yes, come back next year. We will take your research. We will grade it. But also, come grab a card, check out the Needless Things YouTube channel. We will be doing more Star Trek toy talk on the channel because this topic is massive and takes hours and hours to unpack. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Thank you for hanging out at Stellar Fest. Again, fantastic first year con. We're very happy to be here.
Best toy reviews on YouTube.
Well, come on now. Stop it.
No.
But anyway, thank you everybody for coming out. Have fun with the rest of your day. Enjoy the little bit of time we got left at Stellar Fest.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I get you here when we talking about what's next for Star Trek, the future of Star Trek?
Star Trek is the future.
Supposedly.
You have been listening to a Needless Things production. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the very best in toys, movies, music, and pop culture. Until next time, be kind and like what you like.